The fury of Dracula is kind of like the town bicycle. Every major games publisher has now had a ride. With Avalon Hill's 5th edition of the game on the horizon, I very much expect it to be shown and demoed and pushed at Gen Con this year. I thought it would be a lot of fun to get a copy of the very first edition of the game. This game has had some differences in its iterations, which makes sense because the first edition came out in 1987, was made by Games Workshop. We didn't get a second edition until 2005, way later, from Fantasy Flight Games, and this time the designer, Stephen Hand, is joined by Kevin Wilson, who was doing a lot of stuff. He has done a ton of stuff. It makes sense that they would bring in a designer to kind of go over and help make the edition new. And predictably, it changed in a lot of small ways. The overall point of the game remained the same, but the cards, the beautiful cards, finally lending some contemporariness to the game during a time when Fantasy Flight was at its peak. It was a long time. Fantasy Flight was at its peak for quite a few years there. Still some minor gameplay differences between the first and second edition. Now going from second to third edition, we're still Fantasy Flight. Mostly a visual overhaul of the components. I believe the third edition came out in 2015, which made the game accessible to the audience at that time. The miniature sculpts, the player counts, the playtime, all of these things remain the same, but we do have some differences. There are now no dice. Ports were redistributed, zones were removed, train tickets were introduced, combat's a little different, turn structure's a little different. This is all just cursory reading, so if you have personal experience with the first through third editions of the game thus far, absolutely correct me and/or sound off in the comments below. Fourth edition was published by WizKids, featuring all new art, which is absolutely predictable and mandatory, really. Clarifications in the rulebook and pre-painted miniatures. I can't wait to never own that version. And different card sizes. We're moving away from the cooking era of Fantasy Flight games. I've also read that the differences between the first edition and the second and third editions of Fantasy Flight make it easy to infer that FF designed the game in such a way as to possibly potentially come out with expansions because, hey, it's Fantasy Flight games, and honestly, expansions would have been pretty cool to see. But to my knowledge, it never happened. The 5th edition of the game is coming out, I believe, this year from Avalon Hill. But we are going to go back in time and unbox the very first edition because I have it right over here on the Harbinger. Let's go. Welcome home, brave heroes and brave vampire hunters alike. I'm Ash, this is AshQuest, and this is The Fury of Dracula, a board game of Gothic horror by Stephen Hand. This is a limited edition including metal miniatures. 4 superbly detailed white metal playing pieces, manufactured to exacting standards. A board game for 2 to 4 players, aged 12 to adult. You'll have to let me know how long a session might take. I have not played this game yet. The box art is slightly reminiscent of Dungeon Quest. This did actually come out the same year as Dungeon Quest, and has the same box format. This would be known as the bookshelf format of their board games. And several of their other games from around the time period, Warrior Knights, Wizard's Quest included, would have this same box shape and size, making it very easy to have a collection on your bookshelf. For nearly a year now, you and your companions have been stalking your prey from town to town across the continent, finding signs of his evil almost everywhere. You have had to face a multitude of nightmarish things left in his wake. Wolves, thieves, weird swarms of bats, plague, and worse still, but Dracula himself has always eluded you, until now. Your horse's hooves clatter noisily as you chase the rickety gypsy-driven cart, bearing the box in which rests that most foul, ungodly leech. You take aim and fire your revolver. A loud crack resounds and the ugly Zagani falls away from the reins. You are mere yards away when the wagon crashes off the road into a deep ditch, the box falling slowly onto the moist earth. Quickly, you dismount and race forward, stake and crucifix in hand. A wolf howls in the distance, but you ignore it as you prepare to face the Prince of Darkness. In seconds, the box lid is open, revealing nothing. Incredibly, night falls in mere seconds, and you shudder when you hear a menacing laugh sound close behind you. The board game is set in 1898, 8 years after the events depicted in Bram Stoker's classic novel of Dracula. The game is a battle of wills, the rules allowing players to concentrate on the many strategies available to them. It features a unique hidden movement system and exciting blow-by-blow combat rules, which enable players to get involved in the most dramatic struggles of life and death, and beyond. But probably not beyond, unless, you're talking about life and death on the board, and then after death, the player is now excited to flip the board. That would be beyond life and death in the game context. I will have my revenge! This was made in England, and here's the UPC for anybody who needs it. Nothing under the box lid, as usual. There are some homebrew organization techniques at work here in the box in the form of Ziploc bags. I am maintaining the structure of organization that the previous owner had. We are immediately presented with a rules book, and it is a pretty meaty rules book. There's a lot to this game. There is a reason that it is coming up on its 5th edition. But worry not, past page 9, we are met with a simple reference guide, which just explains all of the chits, which I believe were replaced with full-fledged cards in later editions, because after the 80s, we just had this phobia of these informationless chits. We have a fun article written by Stephen Hand in October of 1987, titled In Search of the Real Dracula. I recognize Colin Dixon in the character illustrations credits. I'm sure the other ones here, Martin McKenna, Dave Andrews, are also prominent in the Games Workshop scene. Perhaps the Games Workshop scene of yesterday. You think to baffle me, you, with your pale faces all in a row, like sheep in a butcher's. You shall be sorry yet, each one of you. You think you have left me without a place to rest. But I have more. My revenge is just begun. I spread it over centuries, and time is on my side. This particular copy of the game also came with a 5th player variant homebrew, so somebody could play as Madam Harker. This is Mina. We have the instructions to play this homebrew printed off, as well as the homebrew cards. I actually bought this as part of a lot, and the lot ended up being 2.5 about versions of Dracula. Of course, I collected the best components for myself and my personal copy, and the copy that I'm unboxing in front of you today, plus the only homebrew to come in this 2.5 copies. I built another copy with the 2nd best components, and the 3rd best components went into a bag, and then I realized I probably had those components because somebody bought a 2nd copy in order to make the homebrew. So this is the Madam Harker character card. She has permanent bite and vampire blood. So I thought this was really, really interesting. This was printed off and glued to a hero board, and then her biography here is on the back, where it would be for the other characters as well. They went through the trouble of making her chits also. Every character has got their own little combat and wound markers, and they went ahead and put together 4 of them for her. So we have the 5th player variant homebrew right here. If anybody is interested in finding out about this for their own game, just look for the Fury of Dracula 5th player variant, Madam Harker. This is by Bernard Slama, 2003. So thank you very much to Bernard, but also thank you to whoever printed this off and included it with the lot. I think that is just, it's a gold mine to find something that somebody handcrafted in with the game. Something else I wanted to point out is I found these 2 cards. These are event cards, part of the event deck. There are 2 event decks, one for hunters, one for Dracula. And the number of cards, I believe, is just supposed to be 60 or 63. It's some solid number, but the book doesn't tell you how many of each card you're supposed to have. Well, while I was going through looking at every single component to make sure I had a complete copy, I was comparing pieces, and I came across a Jonathan Harker card, which I kept the one that I believe to be correct because it says to play immediately here, and it says to play immediately here. But the one that I believe was misprinted says keep at the bottom instead of play immediately. So that went into the 2nd best components box. I also have the Dracula version of the Wild Horses card, and when I was going through my 2nd box, I found the Wild Horses card, but it was a Hunter's card. But it really seems like this is supposed to be advantageous to the Dracula player, not the Hunter player. So I decided to keep the Dracula version of this event card. So just weird things about this, which is quite suitable given the nature of the game and the title and the subject matter. We have our Games Workshop mail order card. What do you like least about this game? What do you like most about this game? Please mail it back to Chewton Street and make sure you do it on a Tuesday in it. We have various categories of tile, or chit as I will refer to them, because of the nature of their shape and detail and what's on them and so on. We have 2 movement dice, or I guess these are really used for everything in the game. I'm so used to calling these dice movement dice now. You can guess why. They're the 12 millimeter, it seems, variety. They're wooden. They feel really good. But no, they might be plastic, actually. They just look old. I decided to keep a copy of the plastic miniatures and a copy of the metal miniatures because I am very greedy. And the metal miniatures are as follows. Well, we'll look at them while we look at the plastic miniatures, and we'll look at the character hunter cards, rather, at the same time. We do not have a miniature to represent Madam Harker. We would have to homebrew that. Unfortunately, that just was not included. The reason that there are 4 miniatures is because 3 of them are hunters and 1 of them is Dracula. I will start off by showing you the Dracula miniature. We have Dracula's blue plastic miniature. These same blue miniatures, not these exact same models, but this sort of convention for miniature would go on to feature also in Dungeon Quest. So I think it's really interesting that they use this blue here. The metal version of Dracula is the exact same sculpt, but it is smaller scale, and of course it is metal. So here's the size difference between these two. I don't think there's an advantage or disadvantage to using either one. I think it's just a matter of taste. I can read the names of the rest of the hunters, but I don't know which one is which unless I reference it in the guide here. Yeah, here we are. This is Lord Godalming. All of the hunters have the same wound track, going from 0 to 12, in which they are dead. It's an odd twist. You'll actually count up in this game. You're counting your wounds in a Games Workshop game, and it's incrementally ascending instead of descending. That's crazy. Finally, somebody followed the logic. You have event cards, which will go here, and combat chits, which will go here. You have -1 initiative for the first round of combat with Dracula, but +1 initiative with the first round of combat with any agents. Here's where you'll place the bite tokens. The other side has Lord Godalming's biography. Why is he in the game? And the metal and plastic miniatures for this very exciting, dynamic character. It's worth noting that the 2026 version of this game from Avalon Hill has great miniatures and great sculpts, and it's also worth noting that Avalon Hill have a Dracula expansion for Talisman 5th edition coming out this year. Not out as of the time of this video, but the sculpts for it look really cool. They seem to be the exact same characters, and they likely are the same 3D models, but they have been arranged in different poses to create new sculpts, completely distinct from the 5e Fury of Dracula sculpts. I just thought that was very cool. Here we have Dr. Seward, who has no initiative modifier at all. He's about as milquetoast as it gets. He is color-coded red, though, instead of blue, like Lord Godalming. And Dr. Seward looks like this in his plastic form. This little heroic 28, if that, millimeter miniature. You can see the details of his face very much, although they are slightly mismatched to those details on the portrait of his hunter card. The metal miniature, a suitable size in comparison. We now go on to Professor Van Helsing, who is more of a yellowish greenish. He has +1 initiative for the first round of combat with Dracula, -1 for the first round of combat with any agents. So you can see that there is a minor difference between the characters. He is the one carrying the briefcase with all of his vampire hunts. This is more of a medical bag, actually. It's not a briefcase, but it'll carry all of his vampire hunting equipment. This guy looks very strange. I mean, he doesn't even look like any version of Van Helsing that I've ever seen. He might look like the Mel Brooks version of Van Helsing from Dracula Dead and Loving It, maybe. Fräulein, always appreciate when the setup is given a picture to give you an idea of how the game is actually supposed to be set up. 3 players will play the hunters, while the 4th will play Dracula, and the 4th player has access to a GM screen behind which he will sit and plan and have his moves recorded. Now, the Dracula player will not be publicly known. The location of the Dracula player is not known by the hunters. They have to deduce this, and they have to encounter Dracula on spaces. But the movement and the position of Dracula will be known to the Dracula player behind this screen, which comes with the game. And this is a major part of the mechanics for Dracula. Both sides of this screen are very, very informational, which means people are going to be peering at it all throughout your games. Your sequence of play, your combat sequence, the combat results key, the railway station chart, the initiative modifiers chart, and the valor points chart are all outlined on what is to be the front of this screen, while the combat results key, encounter chits, and group encounters, as well as the valor points chart again, are detailed on the back, along with a map of Europe. Dracula may not use rail movement. Dracula is not allowed on trains. Dracula owes the conductor $20, and he is not going to touch that. This is the Dracula strategy and movement chart, and this will aid the Dracula player in knowing how many blood points Dracula has, as well as the precise location of Dracula at any given time. The game actually tells you do not cheat, because it would be very easy to cheat by just moving your Dracula to a location where he is now at more of an advantage versus the hunters than he would have been, or less of a disadvantage, as the case may be. But it tells you you don't have to cheat. I'm going to find the exact passage, actually. If you are going to play Dracula, you must not cheat. Everything you do is carried out in secret, so there can be no temptation to bend the rules. After all, who's going to know if you move too far, or don't do it? You don't need to cheat. Fury of Dracula gives you plenty of opportunities to be devious without cheating. Besides which, do you need to cheat to beat mere mortals? Thought not. It's very good of Games Workshop to maintain their sense of humor throughout their entire brand. For the board, we have these Dungeon Quest-esque pieces that look like giant jigsaw pieces. It's worth noting that these are not cut out the exact same way for every single copy of this game. Like here, you have two female pieces in the lowest right-hand corner of the map of Europe, but another copy that I had in this same lot, these were male pieces, and that map went together the exact same way. It's just the fitment of the pieces were inverted. So maybe a different printing. It's not a very big board, and it doesn't have to be a very big board, so it doesn't have to take up a whole lot of space on your table. This is the entirety of the map. And yes, your hunters will always be visible to Dracula. He will always be able to see where they are on the map as they try to hunt him down and play different events. But it's not just hunters versus Dracula. There are many other challenges and other mechanics in the game to learn and carry out. As far as the details of the map, we have small towns such as those in Valona, Salonika, Sofia, large towns such as Naples, Rome, Athens, ports, which will be any of these cities where there is a P. Wonder what that stands for. Roads, which are these wiggly lines. Railroads, which are these slightly less wiggly, more liney lines. Sea sector boundaries, such as these, which separate the Atlantic Ocean from the Irish Sea, or the English Channel from the North Sea, and so on. And east-west boundaries, which are a little more involved with the rest of the elements of the map, but it's these dotted lines here that stay on land. When there are only 2 players in the game, one will take Dracula, one will take all 3 hunters. When there are 3 players, one's Dracula, one's 1 hunter, one is 2 hunters, and so on. The game has road movement, sea movement, and rail movement. Sequences of sea moves must begin and end at different ports, and a single sea sector may not be entered more than once. During a sequence of sea moves, Dracula or hunter may not return to the port where they started, or any sea sector they have visited. All trips are one way till you get to the port. After the movement phase is the action phase. Dracula actions include attacking hunters, doing nothing, placing an encounter. After the Dracula movement phase comes the Dracula action phase, then the Lord Goldalming movement phase, then the Lord Goldalming action phase, then the Dr. Seward movement, Dr. Seward action, Van Helsing movement, Van Helsing action, then it goes back to Dracula. They must happen in that correct order for some reason. The hunter action phases consist of searching the town he is in for any encounters that Dracula has placed, the encounter chits that Dracula puts on the strategy and movement chart during his turn. The hunter simply asks Dracula if there is an encounter in the town. Dracula must show the encounter chit to the hunter if there is one in the town box on the strategy and movement chart. After the hunter has dealt with any encounters, Dracula must show his playing piece or the local rumors marker if either of these is in that town box. And if Dracula is present, the hunter can decide whether or not to face him in combat. This is always optional for the hunter. He may not have the courage or the proper weapons. Dracula, however, cannot refuse the combat if the hunter challenges him. The hunter may take new weapons, chits, and event cards at the end of his action phase. This is possible if he is still in the town and if he has dealt with all of his discoveries. For example, if he hasn't been chased out of the town by bats. It is to that end I want to show you the combat encounters. The combat encounter chits. These are all of the combat chits available to Dracula and his agents. Only the Dracula player will use everything in this bag. We've got vampire, storm, bats, fog. Now those aren't the combat chits as present. Those are all of the other kinds of chits that are available. Where are you, combat chits? Here they are. Escape. Yeah, that's very valid for a Dracula combat chit, actually. Strength, hypnosis, claw, fang, dodge. There are different pictures on the escape chits because Dracula has the ability to transform, as he does in the book, so you can escape as fog, escape as Dracula, or escape as bat form. These have different effects depending on which you choose, or perhaps which are available to you. The hunters have similar combat chits: escape, dodge, and fist. Each hunter also has a bite and wound marker. The wound marker will keep track on their hunter board, and the bite marker will indicate whether or not they have the status effect of having been bit. Dracula starts the game with 12 blood points. The blood point marker and the 12 box of the blood point track. They are lost through combat and when certain event cards are played, and each time Dracula embarks at the start of a sequence of sea moves. Can't stay on the water for too long, Drac. Dracula can lose so many blood points that the blood points marker is moved below the 0 box, and when this happens, swap the blood point marker for the blood death marker and move the new counter back towards the 12 box. Further losses of blood points are recorded in the same way by moving the blood death marker up the track. Dracula dies when the blood death marker reaches the 12 box, as surely as if he had been staked through the heart, and the game ends immediately. There are plenty of weapon chits, some of which have to be discarded immediately when they are used. But we have holy water, we have sacred bullets, we have pistol. I see heavenly host is in this bag. We have crucifix, we have rifle. And what's a game of Dracula without the stake? And one of my favorites, garlic. I think I'll set aside a garlic token for use with my Dungeon Quest game so I can homebrew a way to get past the pesky vampire event. Other chit types exist as well with their own references in the book. Combat can of course take place between hunters and agents of Dracula, such as vampires, or servants, or Zgani, who may be equipped with rifles and knives. The only thing left to do is show you the combat table. We have information that is repeated here, and what the results are of combat when a hunter plays one of his combat chits versus Dracula playing one of his combat chits. I'm using the royal he here. For example, if the hunter uses holy water and Dracula uses claw, well, that's going to be 3 blood. 3 blood, Dracula. It looks like the stake can kill Dracula immediately. We have a daytime chart. I believe there are we have the combat action board on the back of this. I didn't actually notice this before. You have a place to reference Agent 1, 2, and 3, as well as Van Helsing, Dr. Seward, and Goldaming, so you have a way to keep track of all the combat between multiple participants as needed. This is Van Helsing, Dr. Seward, and Goldaming versus Dracula himself instead of just agents. I like that distinction very much. And the last thing to do is show you a selection of the Hunter and Dracula event cards. If the hunter plays this at the start of his movement phase, he may remove either 1 bite or 2 wounds. Only one of these may be played by a hunter per turn, and you keep this card. Hired scouts, you may immediately choose up to the resulting number of any towns on the board. Dracula must declare what, if any, encounter chits are present in those towns. Advanced planning. Playing this gives the hunter +1 to his initiative roll for any 1 round of combat. Vampiric lore. If the hunter finds local rumors, he may play this, forcing Dracula to reveal his current location, what his next move will be, and the 5 chits presently in his encounter set. It goes on like this, with all kinds of surprising ways of revealing information, such as newspaper reports. Dracula must immediately reveal his present location to all vampire hunters. And there is a local rumors mechanic with this game, in which Dracula lays down the local rumors marker placed in the town box he has just left on the strategy and movement chart behind his screen. Dracula can only start his action phase after the local rumors marker has been moved, and it only moves when Dracula moves. If he passes or does not move, the marker remains stationary for that turn. So wherever Dracula goes, the rumors follow, and this can be a helpful way of allowing the hunters to keep hot on Dracula's trail. Dracula also has his own event cards. Devilish Power. Play this immediately after a hunter who has played an event card to cancel its effects. You keep this. The hunter who gave Dracula this card must miss his next turn. This is mishap. Wait, the hunter who gave Dracula this card. What? That's interesting. Rage. At the start of combat, straight after rolling for daylight, Dracula may see all the weapon chits of any one hunter involved. He may then snatch one of the chits, forcing it to be instantly discarded. Combat then occurs as normal, but Dracula may not try to escape for 1 to 6 rounds. Roll a dice. We have several of these mishap cards. Sensationalist Press is an event card. If the hunters play a newspaper reports event card, play this straight afterwards. You may then declare 2 towns aloud, only one of which must be your real location. Sensationalist Press. It's fake news, said Dracula. I have not been cited in that town. Or maybe I have. It's one of these two towns. All in all, I think that this is a very involved and a very immersive game, and I think the theme is absolutely nailed just with this first edition. You'll have to let me know if you have played multiple editions. Which one is your favorite? I've seen lots of different opinions on the different editions by people who have just played the preceding edition. So there have been plenty of people who think that 4th edition is a huge upgrade from 3rd just because of the rulebook clarifications. But then, like, it's a downgrade for the art, and isn't it always just a downgrade for the art? I guess when you start at a 10, it's very difficult to make any sort of improvements. All you can do is hope that the edition after the next one is going to be better. More or less, however, that is my surface level overview of the Fury of Dracula, and now I feel I'll be going into the Games Workshop, the Avalon Hill version of 5th edition. And by the way, it's just crazy how many games Avalon Hill has now licensed from Games Workshop to be able to make accessible and make new editions of. Time will tell if these are going to be really good. I mean, I guess time has told and has been telling if each edition of game that has come out has been very good. There have been lots of people who love Talisman 5th edition, for example, but a spattering of people who really enjoy the old versions are not pleased at all with some of the choices that have been made. While the gameplay is functionally and fundamentally the same, because it's very difficult to change any one little thing about Talisman and not expect it to have a ripple effect that changes a lot of other stuff. Choices made such as the amount of gold and the value of fate points definitely can be divisive. And of course, the art direction is always something that people will comment on and have a preference on. And that's understandable, it's valid, and it's warranted. The Fury of Dracula is going to remain in my collection until I've played several games of it, but I do have a feeling this is going to be a keeper, especially with its bookshelf format matching my other Games Workshop games from this time. Thank you all, brave heroes, vampire hunters alike, for joining me on this uncovering, this discovering of this really cool old game, and I'm really glad that I discovered it through Avalon Hill, actually, because I've never played this or heard of it really before the news about the 5th edition. Comment what you like down below, and I will see you in the next exciting hunt. Until then, onward for now.